ain't drunk. I'm just drinking.
But you're so high.
Oh man, you know I ain't high.
But you're so high.
Yeah, well I just take a little sip every now and then.
But you're so high.
Bam! Hey kids, welcome back. I have got to get a new Yoda mat because this is just not right on any level. It's like I'm looking through the phone right now and it's like all this black. It's just boring and it's like a Bardwell video. So anyway, what we're gonna do today is bend this tube. Yip-de-doo, real exciting, right? Now, the trick to this is I'm building another boat, and we're going to do an overview of my other boat that I built the other day, but I'm going to be building an electric boat, which I think will be the first time ever that I've built an electric boat, and that's coming. But one of the things I'm going to do is my buddy, Wes, FPV fanatic down in Mississippi, sent me an old motor of his I'm going to use in the boat. This is, I believe, an RC truck motor, 2050 kV 4-pole. Now, in boat, there's some grime or something there. My fault. In boat, we usually use 6-pole motors, but I'm going to use this 4-pole just to see what it's all about. So, in order to do that, now, if you look at this, it's air-cooled. Okay, see those fins there? And I did design and 3D print this cover that will go over this. And I bought a high volume that my buddy Drew turned me on to, a high volume fan. And this fan fits in here. And the way I designed this, see that? Bam. The way I designed this is that it will circulate the air around the ribs through here, and then I still have to clean this support material out around the motor and exit out this side, which honestly is probably going to be good enough. But I think I'm going to use this for something else. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a water-cooled jacket for a air-cooled motor. Now, one of the problems with that is if you go to bend copper tube, and this is copper tube, if you go to bend this, think of it just like a straw. If you bend it, you're going to get a crink in there, right? And it's going to not circulate water. You cannot bend round anything unless you have a mandrel on the back side. So what happens is, like in my industry, when we're welding exhaust pipes or anything round, or there's any type of tube bending involved, you have what's called a mandrel. And basically you've got a mandrel that goes to the center of the pipe that is flexible, and then you've got these concave shoulders that support the inner wall when you do this. And it bends very perfect, and there's no kinks and whatever else. Take a drinking straw and bend it at a restaurant or a cocktail straw or something, and you'll see exactly what I mean. It just bends right over, and that is not good for our water cooling. So I'm thinking to myself, how often am I gonna do this? Probably not very fucking often, right? So I don't want to buy a special tube bender, and honestly, I didn't even find a tube roller. You don't need a tube bender for this project. You need a roller that you can roll so it looks like that. And there's some tricks out there if you Google it. There's not a ton of information on the internet. There's some guys that'll say, this is for hobby stuff. We're not talking home pipe. This technique I'm going to show you will work for home pipe, but yeah, you don't want to do that. But for doing a coil, guys say, well, you fill it with salt. And when you fill it with salt, that adds as the support to the inside. Then you can bend it, and then you have to dissolve the salt. But then it's a pain in the ass, because when you're doing small tubes, getting the salt in there and making sure that it's really got to be in there densely. Okay, so in order to do that on a small pipe, it's almost impossible. So I came up with a different way, and what we're going to use, hang on a second, is this 3-in-1 oil. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of physics, and we're going to do a internal hydraulic pressure. It's very cool. So we're going to take a little bit of this, and I put it in one of these little squeeze bottles I got at a hobby shop. But you can use it in anything, if you got a syringe, whatever else. And we're going to take, I didn't prepare for this, which is normal, a Dike? Oh, you probably can't use that fucking term anymore, so we're going to call it a wire cutter, but in industry we call it a dike. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our finger over the one end. And if you just try to fill this with oil, it's going to overflow because you've got an air trap in there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to let it bleed out the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of put my finger over it, but not totally. That way it doesn't rush out necessarily. We're going to do it until it spills out. I don't know if you guys can see this. Let's make sure. Yep. Okay, make sure it's going through. So we're going to bleed this out. I don't know if you guys can see the bottom there. There we go. Got most of it, and we're going to put our finger over it like that. Okay? Then we're going to crimp it with the dikes, like that, and it's still not airtight. And then we're going to fill it back up at the top, and we're going to crimp it again. Okay. Bam. Now, that is not airtight, but it is tight enough that the oil is not going to spill out. So right now, you've got an oil-filled tube. Yip-de-doo. Not very exciting. So then, next thing you're going to need, I'm going to use a hobby vise. You don't necessarily have to, just to hold the tube. Hopefully y'all can see this. Okay, just like that. Good old physics class, right? Yeah. All right, so we're going to bring this in a little bit so y'all can see it. Now, you can use a soldering iron. I am going to use a soldering gun. Wow. All right, so just because it's faster. Solder. As usual, I've lost my fucking solder. Son of a bitch. Every time, no matter what I'm doing, I lose my solder. I'm not even doing electronics and I lost my fucking... Hang on a minute. All right, I found it. Bam, there it is. Same solder I use for quads. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our heat gun. Make sure it's on. Okay. And then we're going to just slide it right there. Sometimes if you're lucky, there we go. Okay. And we're just going to let that shit boil. We're going to let that oil burn out. It's going to ooze out the other end a little bit, but not much. And then we're going to take our solder and we're going to put it in the pipe, in the tube, until it gets a fill. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can see that. That's it. Nothing exciting. All right. But what you've done here is you have sealed this tube with solder. Okay. We're going to do the other side, other end, sorry. And you'll know, just let it sit. It'll boil and bubble and whatnot. Now, it is not necessarily important to have the entire thing just absolutely perfectly full of oil. You want it as full as you can. Okay. Cool. And we're done with that. So what you've done, make sure it's nice and hot, is you've got probably 98% of this filled up with either hot gas or oil. All right? And you have it capped at both ends. Ooh, hot. Okay? Stick it in your roto twister. A little bit of lead's good for you. All right? So, this is waste material, obviously. Okay? Hopefully that side is good. It looks good. Now, what you've got is you've got hydraulic pressure, not to mention probably a little bit of gas, Don't get excited, Bardwell. A little bit of gas on the inside that is going to give you inner wall support. Now, in theory, what we can do is we can bend it around the motor. Now, I don't recommend you bending it around the motor because you want the coil to be a little bit tighter than what you're wrapping it around so it gets a nice, good contact. So I would say find something that's a little bit smaller than what you want to wrap around. But this is just experimental. I'm not even getting, well, it's not experimental, but just to show you guys. So we're going to do that with this. So I'm just going to wrap it around here. Okay. Hang on a minute. You want to hold it as tight as possible, but again, this is for video. I'm not using this pipe because I need to use a much, much longer one than this. Look at that. Bam. Now, I would have done this on normally a much smaller diameter. Look at that. Little bit of a bow there. So that's probably where we had some air. That's probably where we had some air. I did this earlier. Now, this one was an experimental pipe that I was trying with wax earlier, so I don't think I got this totally full of oil for you guys on this video because I couldn't get the wax all the way out. I was trying a different experiment. But as you can see, if you would have done this without that in there, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to show you. This is the first one that I did. Look at that. Perfect. Then you just cut the ends off, put your water tubes on there for your cooling. Bam. Now, normally for a motor, you would make this much bigger. It would be about this long, this wide. This was just for an experiment because I wanted to figure out a way. Look at how nice those walls look. That is hand bent. So I did the exact same thing I just showed you guys, only this one had a little bit of wax in it, so it probably got fucked up. But this is still usable. It's totally fine. It's going to be fine. Then when you cut the ends off with a Dremel, which is what I do recommend you do, there you go. So it works. Now you've got all this hydraulic pressure in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this other one, or this one we just did. We're going to bend it back out. Okay. Then we're going to take a Dremel. Actually, we don't even need to Dremel it. Save a little bit of time. We're going to do this. All right, we're going to release that hydraulic pressure. Now, I'm going to bend it again. Yeah, I think I still got a crink in there. That's okay, but you'll see, watch. See that? That is exactly what you don't want. And that is because we have no pressure on this side. That's bad. Very bad. So that is how you bend hobby tube, and that's what I call it. Anything 1/4 inch and down is pretty much hobby grade, and there's not a lot of videos out there on how to do it. Guys, you know, they 3D print fucking mandrels, and they 3D print little wheels. Well, it's all well and good if you got a 3D printer, which I do, but you know, it's a lot of fucking work. See, that one's oozing oil. It's a lot of work for what it is. And it's like, really, how often are you bending this shit? So if you wanted to build a, this is for a boat, obviously. If you wanted to build, instead of using silicone tubing all the way through your boat, which a lot of people, including myself, do, you could be really fancy about it and do copper, fill the bitch up with oil, crimp it, solder it like I showed you, and just bend it any way you want by hand. And then make sure you've got about yay much you can spare on each end. Use a cutting wheel for a Dremel, I do recommend. Little mandrel there, and cut the ends off, stick your tubes on there, bam, you're done. It's really good, really cheap. Buy a bottle of this at Lowe's for like $1. It lasts you 20 years. It's just fucking perfect. And then you've got a water-cooled motor. So when I get my other build done for the electric, I'll probably do this again and show you guys in the long tube version of how that works. So until the next time, kids, bam, keep your shiny side up or the dry side up, whichever, your boats, cars, quads, whatever. And I'll see you later. Bye.